Tomorrow, or next week, or sometime this year, a piece of paper will land in your hands with your blood test results on it. Rows of numbers, some in black, a few in red. You will scan it top to bottom looking for exactly one thing. Red numbers. If nothing is red, you'll breathe out and move on with your day. You think that piece of paper is a verdict. But the real answer is far stranger. That paper isn't judging you. It's comparing you to a crowd of strangers you've never met. Your body has no idea what normal means. Only statistics do. Here's where it starts. In the early 1900s, a biochemist named Otto Folin developed some of the first reliable methods for measuring chemicals in human blood. Before Folin, doctors mostly guessed. Blood was mysterious. It was too complicated to measure precisely, so it stayed a black box. Folin cracked it open. He figured out how to quantify things like creatinine and uric acid in tiny samples. For the first time, a number could represent something happening inside you that you couldn't see or feel. But a number by itself means nothing. Is 90 a good blood sugar reading? Is it terrible? You have no way of knowing unless someone tells you what range other healthy people fall into. This is the part almost nobody explains to you. Every normal range on your lab report was built the same way. Researchers took blood from a large group of people assumed to be healthy. They measured a chemical. They wrote down where most of those people landed. Then they drew a line around the middle 95% of the results and called that range normal. Not perfect, not required, just common, which means 5% of perfectly healthy people fall outside the normal range for any given test, just by chance, just by being human. 5%. Think about how many numbers are on a standard blood panel. 15, 20. Run the math, and it becomes almost mathematically guaranteed that at least one number on your sheet will land outside the lines, even if nothing at all is wrong with you. Does that surprise you? It surprises almost everyone. So let's actually look at what those numbers are doing, one section at a time, because each one is telling a completely different story about a completely different system in your body. Start with the complete blood count, usually abbreviated CBC. This is the most common blood test in the world, and it's really 3 tests stitched together. Red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. Your red blood cell count, along with hemoglobin and hematocrit, tells a story about oxygen. Hemoglobin is the protein inside red blood cells that grabs oxygen in your lungs and drops it off everywhere else in your body. Low hemoglobin usually means anemia, which is your blood running short on delivery trucks. It can come from iron deficiency, blood loss, or a dozen other causes, and the number alone won't tell you which one. It only tells you something is worth investigating. White blood cells tell a completely different story. These are your immune system soldiers. A high white count often means your body is fighting something right now, an infection, an injury, sometimes inflammation from a chronic condition. A low white count can mean the opposite, an immune system that's suppressed, sometimes from a virus, sometimes from certain medications, sometimes from something more serious that needs a closer look. And platelets? Platelets are your clotting response. Too few, and small injuries bleed longer than they should. Too many, and your blood can clot when you don't want it to. 3 completely different systems. One test. Now move to the metabolic panel, and the story shifts again. This section is mostly about your kidneys, liver, and blood sugar. Creatinine is a waste product from your muscles, and your kidneys are supposed to filter it out constantly. When creatinine builds up in your blood, it usually means your kidneys aren't filtering as efficiently as they should. Doctors use creatinine, combined with your age and sex, to estimate something called your glomerular filtration rate, which is essentially a grade for how well your kidneys are doing their job. Glucose is simpler to understand, but just as easy to misread. A single glucose reading only tells you your blood sugar at that exact moment, which is why doctors often look at hemoglobin A1C instead. A1C measures how much sugar has been sticking to your hemoglobin over roughly the past 3 months, because red blood cells live about that long. One glucose number is a photograph. A1C is a slow-motion video. Liver enzymes, ALT and AST, work almost like a smoke alarm. Your liver cells don't normally spill these enzymes into your bloodstream. When liver cells get damaged, whether from alcohol, certain medications, viral hepatitis, or fatty liver disease, they leak these enzymes out, and your blood levels rise. High ALT and AST don't tell you what's damaging your liver. They just tell you that something is. Are you starting to notice a pattern here? None of these numbers, on their own, diagnose anything. They're smoke detectors, not fire investigators. A number outside the range means look closer here, not something is definitely wrong. This matters more than you might think, because research on how people actually read their own lab results paints a worrying picture. Studies on health literacy, including work published in the Journal of General Internal Medicine, have found that a large share of patients struggle to correctly interpret whether a lab value outside the normal range is dangerous, mildly concerning, or essentially meaningless. People with lower numeracy skills were especially likely to overestimate how serious an abnormal result actually was. In other words, the gap between what a number technically says and what patients believe it means can be enormous, and that gap causes real anxiety. Which brings back Otto Folin, in a strange way. Folin gave the world the ability to measure blood chemistry precisely. What he couldn't give the world was context. Numbers don't explain themselves. They never have. The next leap forward came decades later, in 1957, from an engineer named Leonard Skeggs. Before Skeggs, blood tests were done largely by hand. One sample, one measurement, one chemist, painstakingly slow. Skeggs invented the autoanalyzer, the first machine that could process blood samples continuously and automatically. It sounds almost mundane now, a machine doing chemistry instead of a person. But this single invention is the reason your blood panel today can measure 15 or 20 different values from one small vial, cheaply, in under an hour, instead of requiring a technician's entire afternoon for a single number. Automation solved a problem nobody could have solved by hand. It also created a new one. When testing is fast and cheap, doctors order more of it. More tests mean more numbers. More numbers mean more chances that something, purely by statistical noise, will land outside the normal range. The very success of automated blood testing is part of why so many people now open their results and feel a flicker of fear over a number that means almost nothing on its own. So what should you actually do the next time you see a red number on your results? The first question worth asking isn't, is this bad? It's how far outside the range is this? And is it just one number, or does it fit a pattern with other numbers around it? A creatinine level that's slightly high alongside completely normal everything else is a very different story than a creatinine level that's high alongside abnormal electrolytes and abnormal blood pressure. Context is doing almost all of the real diagnostic work here, not the single isolated value. The second question is whether this is a new abnormal result or a repeat one. Your own body has a baseline that might sit slightly outside the population average simply because you're an individual person, not a statistical average. A test that's mildly elevated for you every single year, consistently, tells your doctor something completely different than a test that jumps suddenly from normal to abnormal in a matter of months. None of this means you should ignore red numbers. It means you should stop treating a lab report like a courtroom verdict and start treating it like the opening line of a conversation with someone trained to interpret it. The number is real. The meaning of the number requires context that a piece of paper alone cannot give you. So tomorrow, or next week, or sometime this year, that piece of paper with your blood test results will land in your hands again. Rows of numbers, a few in red. And this time, when you scan it top to bottom, you won't just be looking for red numbers. You'll understand exactly what that paper actually is. Not a verdict, just a comparison to strangers, waiting for the one person qualified to turn it into your real story.